Good morning, hello. I'm talking about Power Struggle this morning, my second album. But in theory, I suppose I should mention there was obviously music, as some may know, between The Great Distraction and Power Struggle. I launched myself a small EP um, between that period, and that was called, at the time, Beyond the Inferno. Not a particularly great title, actually. I wasn't quite chuffed about that title, but what it appears is that after The Great Distraction was made, I don't know, I spoke in the last video about making the album, uh, and about thinking there was an album in me, which I was surprised about right at the beginning of that process. Um, but once the album was finished and it was done, I really realised that I wanted to do more. It was just something inside me. It was like, you've got to do more. I was very agitated. I was right on the edge. It's like, you just got to, that was a great process making that album. Is there more to do? And obviously there kind of was. But I didn't know I'd have an album in me. So hence I sort of played around, dabbled, and made a track and made another track, and subsequently it became that weird, as I say, EP called Beyond the Inferno. Now we'll talk about that on another video, that particular them tracks and the process about that. But I wanted to kind of at least mention that yes, there was something between The Great Distraction and Power Struggle, and it was that, and that's what led on to this, because then it suddenly became apparent that I did have more than one album in me. In fact, it was a necessity almost to produce music or output music. And with Power Struggle, it became evident that I'd definitely had more of a concept in mind. I like playing with words, so as you can probably see, the name Power Struggle, what's it mean? Well, it can mean more than one thing, and generally that's how I work. I'm not in your face with things. You can take it or leave it as you want, but usually I like playing with words, and because I'd identified the Power Struggle, the album, was music based on the electronic genres that I knew at the time. Then obviously power was to do with electricity, and the concept was electric music. And there has been different genres over the years. Trance, straightforward electronic music, electronica, and all the sub genres that go beyond that. Now I can't touch all of them now because today there's so many, and I think it becomes becomes very confusing to a lot of people. What genre do you belong to? I mean, me personally, I don't even know what genre I belong to. Sometimes there's a bit of industrial going on, I'm aware of. Sometimes, pure electronic, and noticeably with Power Struggle, there is one or two trance-like type tracks. But the whole process of what I've been doing, I've been going down a path of my own experimentation, and I don't want to sound like anyone else. So if I have a unique sound or a different sound, then it's purely and simply because I'm just experimenting and playing. I mean, there's such a good time to have when you're constructing these tracks. Basically, I've always found it kind of great to know that you're the first person to hear such music. And if you've enjoyed music like I have for the amount of years I've been listening to it, then to actually get involved yourself and then start playing and starting to put music together that you'd really like, and you can follow that through yourself, then that's, it's magic. It's quite amazing. Now, because my memory doesn't work too well, maybe I should have done these videos years ago, because I have to admit, I cannot remember for the life of me what track I started first on this album. I know which tracks I finished with because they pretty much end the album. Certainly the Conditioning, parts 1 and 2. They were definitely the last tracks on the album. And I'll come back to them later. It's quite... as I say, it's history and stories to tell with all these albums. I'll start with the track order opposed to knowing what I did first. I don't think Electron, as an example, which is the first track on the album, was the first track I made. My memory serves me that it wasn't. I think it might have been the third or fourth track I was working on. But as it starts the album and I work in that order, I'll talk a little bit about Electron. What I liked about Electron most is that unique sound created right bang in the middle of the track, something that builds and builds and builds, and then something happens, and then there's a kind of echo effect that goes on and I don't know. When I heard that, I was like, I thought I'd had some sort of eureka moment. I thought I've definitely never heard something like that, and I did want to put in the track at a later stage as well, which is quite well, it's what a lot of musicians, I suppose, would do if they had something that stood out. But I was a bit canny with this. I thought, no, it's something that I only want to be in that track once. And if you hear it or you like that part, there's no other way of listening to it than to relive it, which means you've got to go back and play the track again. That's when it started to twig with me that you could actually make hooks in a track that, you know, favourite bits, if you like, of the whole music process. It's weird because I didn't notice this until I was doing it myself, and yet I believe probably a lot of artists have been doing this for some time. It's not skullduggery, it's just something that will twig or identify with the listener, and they really will want to hear that particular piece of music within the piece of music. I mean, I'm one for, like, if I'm going to start listening to a track, I want to hear it from beginning to end. Always have been. I don't know if that's a sort of OCD or what, but I never liked DJs cutting into the beginning of the tracks and certainly at the end of the tracks and so on. I wanted to hear them pure, as they were meant to be, from beginning to end. And that's hence probably why I make the music I do as well, with these beginning and ends. But yeah, that really, I don't know, triggered something when I discovered that, what I produced in Electron. What can I say about Elastic Scattering? That's one of the trance tracks that I was mentioning earlier. I love it. I mean, how can I not love it? I don't know. It's I would promote that one to death because it's right up my street. I've put some really unique stuff into there. Again, I haven't heard anyone else do to this day, and maybe there's a reason for it. I don't know. But there's something from my perspective that just makes it such a pounding, moving force of energy that I just love. And again, you know, the whole process of producing that track was just, excitement, full excitement, you know, because of what you're expanding, what you're producing, and how far can you go. Sometimes it's where do you cut the line, where do you stop? I mean, there are some tracks I'll talk about at some stage where I found it extremely difficult to try and find a way to stop the tracks. Elastic Scattering may well have been one of them, because as far as I was concerned, it was like it was just a driving thing. But then again, I suppose I'm looking here, it says it's 4 minutes 41 seconds long, and that's not particularly a long track by comparison to others. So yeah, it's all worked. Incandescent. Yeah, I don't know. This was a track that, from my memory serves me well. I gave another work colleague to listen to the whole album. Actually, he went home and he ended up listening to that track, and apparently he stopped his car to phone me, and he was just like in such full of excitement, just saying wow. But you know, some of them tracks do build like that. I mean, a lot of my tracks build actually. It's a reminder of where I seem to go. I seem to start with this kind of rough template, and then it sort of expands, and then it just, I always seem to, I mean, if you look at the charts of most of my music, you'll always see them actually escalating and growing, and boom. It's just a way of storytelling, but as I say, storytelling with music, as far as I'm concerned. Ascendancy, as far as I'm concerned, I think that's the one that starts with the car engine at the beginning. That was me starting to dabble with different sounds and different noises, and I don't know, hang on, am I getting this right? Let me just double check. I might have to play a second of it just to See if I'm familiar, because it could be the other track. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, getting it wrong there. Subatomic is the one that starts with the engine. Yes, Ascendancy is exactly what it is, isn't it? It's like a stepping stone. It's like it's funny. Should have realised by the title. Yeah, it's just that slow marching process of moving forward and getting faster and faster and higher, if you like. Yeah, it's can't remember much about it. How weird is that? I can't remember. I can't really talk about the track because I can't really remember it. It might have been from a certain point of view. I've got more of a feeling perhaps it was where I was hitting areas where I understand and identify with other artists now that make filler tracks. Maybe it was a track that I thought it's got something, but I have to admit if I'm sitting here now and I don't remember even producing it, I obviously recognised it needed to go on the album or had a place for the album, but I don't know. I don't. It's weird that I don't have any emotion towards it or feeling about it. And even when I was listening to it there, I was thinking, yeah, I can understand the process of going higher, but the whole structure of it, yeah, I don't even know what genre that belongs in. Don't know. So that's just a curious track, and maybe I should go back to listen to that just to experience that feeling. I will go on then. I'll go on to Subatomic, which is definitely the one with the car starting, and that was like the feeling of making seeing if I could make a track that it goes back to Great Distraction again, seeing if you could create them things in your mind where you can actually feel like you're there, and Subatomic was, I mean, albeit its name is a reference to electronics or electricity, I had to give them names that were quite close to how the sound felt, though the idea of Subatomic was to have a racing car, starting the engine, hence the engine starting or cranking it over, and then driving a car, and then you'll hear it throughout the song where you hear the screeching tyres and stuff like that as well, where you, in theory, I wanted to create a mental picture again of this kind of visualisation of driving a car really fast, and driving through streets and obviously taking corners at high speeds and all sorts of stuff, just general fun. It could be a car chase, it could be just getting a buzz out of driving fast around streets, I don't know, but because I listen to a lot of the music, not just my music, but obviously the other music I've talked about before, generally it's always when I'm in a car. I'm always listening to music when I'm in a car. I love it. You're surrounded with nothing but the music. You concentrate on the driving, of course, but you're just, you're in, I have the music turned up loud and I'm just listening. And you put a track on like that when you're driving, then of course maybe it changes your driving style. I don't drive like that anymore, mind. I'm a lot more mature, older, and I plan my routes. So if I know it's going to take me an hour to get somewhere, it's going to take me an hour to get somewhere. If I want to get there on time, I leave early. It's easy. So I'm probably one of your Sunday drivers now. It's terrible. Anyway, that's distraction. So sorry about that. Synthesize. Yeah. I love talking about synthesize because that actually was again a new process for me. Starting something and doing something differently. The key to this one, where I knew there was something with this particular track, was the fact that I started it and then had a weird feeling of restarting it, and I followed that through and I thought, oh yeah, I really like that. And of course when I did the second part of the replay, I added a few extra elements in to make it sound, if you were listening, that it had actually changed, and then it filters into the actual tune it was supposed to. And that was the first track that ever got played on the radio as well. Chris Watts of In the Moog, he played that back in, I think, June, July of 2016. That was something else. I didn't even consider any of my music ever being played on any sort of radio. So I was really appreciative of Chris actually playing that. And that's the history of, knowing Chris, if you like, and In the Moog. It's weird. Fate obviously takes its journey, takes its place. You know, I can't remember even why I decided to push the music out further. I really don't know. Things have just evolved, and a lot of it's been a journey for sure. Luminous Efficacy, I think that's how you pronounce it. Again, I think it comes into this sort of like the Ascendancy track. I am going to play a little bit of it, just to recapture. I know the next tracks. Oh yeah, sort of dancey track. Yeah, I mean, I like getting back into my dancey tracks on occasions. I think even The Great Distraction had a couple of elements of this. So when you hit something that sounds like that, and it's kind of got a very positive sound and lots of energy, then I do think, you know, why not follow it through and see where it goes. So yeah, I've just really identified, I think, the mental process behind Ascendancy and Luminous Efficacy, in the fact that they may not have been like tracks I'd thought about before. Let's say like the Electron, the Electric Scattering, I don't know, like from the previous album, Lobotomy and God, etc. I think they were, sometimes you'd have some stuff fall into your lap, and then you just sort of follow that process through to see where it would go. I've had it a couple of times where it's the music that's taken me somewhere rather than me taking the music somewhere. And it's kind of, yeah, it's good probably for me even to make these little videos, because suddenly it identifies the processes, the whole processes, and probably of other musicians too, because there I am thinking I'm usually in control of the music, and I have to admit these tracks are actually telling me, no, this was actually the music in control of me. So that's quite enlightening actually, because when I'm doing these videos I do them as a complete monologue. I don't script them. There's nothing written here to tell me what I should and shouldn't say, and how I should follow it through. If I muck up while I'm making one of these videos, I'll have to start again, I suppose, and then I'd lose track and thought and train of thought, etc., of what I'm talking about. And I don't know. I haven't even thought about editing these things, because again, I don't even know where I'd edit it from. And it'd be all these little weird cuts that you see sometimes, and that bothers me when I'm watching other people doing these videos, because you think, you know, you're probably messed up there. And I may mess up and say things along the way here, but at least you're getting the whole unedited version, and you see me for who I am, which again I prefer. Troposphere, yeah, I love this. I love this track. This is probably my secret favourite track on this album, and it just was a grower, and another one that just sort of played with my mind. I think back that a lot of the tracks didn't actually have proper names either. I think I named the tracks at the end of the album once I decided what I was going to name the album and where the link was going to go. So as much as it was a kind of, there was a formula to the whole process of this album, and there may have been a hint of track name or track names and album names, I have to admit I think it was quite, I don't know, lucid. I don't think it was kind of, it was hard, you know, it was a solid fixture. It wasn't like it was definitely going to be this. It was almost like let's just see where it goes, let's see where the whole process takes us, and then sort of develop it from at the back end. So Troposphere, yeah, I mean, I think it sounds kind of very jungly actually, all sorts of things, and it was the first time I sort of let rip with cross-pollination of lots of different noises coming in at different levels. Now that works absolutely fine with me, as I said before many times. My association with Tangerine Dream, there's a lot of that music that's staged and got things coming in and going out, and I've kind of got the brain that can kind of grasp it all. I don't get sort of confused or hot wired at one point to, I can sort of handle these different sounds and noises all at once, and that's, to me, it's just, I don't know, it's not really fascinating. It's just that I can absorb it like that, and I love taking it like that, and I can re-listen back, and then I can listen to the different threads. And Troposphere is exactly one of them because there's a lot going on in it. But at the same time, I suppose I've never really identified the people listening, and some people listening, and one or two people have told me that they can't deal with that because they can't grapple with the music at all these different levels all at one time. One guy in particular, a friend of mine, has said it's all white noise. Well, I've never identified it as that, but I understand where he's coming from. If your brain can't handle things the same, and he identifies us as human beings, they're all different, and the process of music, liking certain music or following certain music, there's a reason for it. But I've never evaluated beyond that. I do the music I do because I like doing the music that I do, and I don't get swayed to try and start making music to make other people happy. If that's going to change the whole process of why I do what I do, and that'd be complicated, and that'd be the same route as going down to make music for making money rather than making it for enjoyment. It's never going to work. You're going to sit there, just, I don't know, structured. I don't know. It's just not going to work. So I think that's why money and music don't go together in a way. I mean, there are musicians who obviously don't mind having the money. I'm not saying I wouldn't, but I'd rather follow my line of producing music for no money, and I don't know, make it for someone else's benefit for money, but then not enjoy the whole process and creativity. High Tension. Yeah, I've got a feeling the Troposphere and High Tension came together. High Tension's a very similar-ish type track to Troposphere in some senses, because it does have a multitude of layers, but I did play around. I'll admit that I probably had a bit of a Zuluk moment from Jean-Michel Jarre there, where I was trying to dabble with voices in a totally different way, or using vocal sounds, and it sounds a bit like a jungly, well, mesh of a jungly type thing with humans. Euphoric, I'll just jump to, that's the last track, but that actually was a mix from a track called Euphoria, which was on Beyond the Inferno, because it was either longer or a slight variation on that track. I called it Euphoric instead. In actual fact, if you think about it, it doesn't follow the names, the electric names that the other ones had either. It means something totally different. Nothing to do with Power Struggle. Just bolted it on. Bolted that track on purely and simply because I thought I had it was some sort of legacy to something I'd done before, and just in case people had missed the EP or something, that I should at least take or extract something from something I'd done previously, but not completely. Otherwise it would have been Euphoria on there, not Euphoric. And then the Conditioning. This was odd again. Where I told you with The Great Distraction I hit walls, which I appreciate happening, but it almost stopped me from completing the album after about the 7th track. On The Great Distraction, Power Struggle was the same actually. So by the time I'd got to something like High Tension, I got to a real weird phase where I was really happy with progress in some of them tracks. Amazed myself. And then I hit a wall. And The Conditioning, Light and Dark, it's the same track actually. I don't know if anyone's ever listened. It's the same track, just some bits have been taken out and other bits put in. It's the reason why the track length is exactly the same. And it is true. I mean, I played with it. I made a darker version and a lighter version. I think the overall output of my mind was actually thinking of making a light track altogether. So putting a dark track, it just goes to show I keep getting brought back into making darker music, even when I didn't want to. And for sure, I think the darker version than the light version works better. But that was me running out of ideas. But I feel like I failed a little bit on that one, because I still piloted and went through rather than waiting for a moment. So I sort of broke the wall, and I don't mind being truthful here, but I seemed to break the wall by not following my usual guidelines, not waiting for the moment to arrive to wait for another track to come along and just be processed in the same manners as before. I just proceeded anyhow with producing 2 tracks. As I say, are pretty much the same, apart from a slightly different version of them, just to complete the album. So you know, that's a truth now. That's you know, as I say, I've got no problem telling the truth. I want to be genuine. I don't want to lie to anyone. But even I will probably sometimes get to the end of the album, the real end of the album, and then perhaps not listen to these tracks, or shuffle it on perhaps to Euphoric. So yeah, if I was to ever sort of rework or bring these albums out again, I'm not saying I will, but if I ever did, then I'd imagine that these tracks, for instance, wouldn't exist on that version of a newer modernised album. But there you have it. That's the run through of Power Struggle, and I can't remember how long it took me to complete, but it definitely gave me that feeling that there was more inside me and I needed to keep going. I don't think I'll explain anything further on that until I talk about the next album in succession, because I think when it comes to Horror Show, a lot more happened at that stage and process, and that was only a few months beyond this album coming out. So thank you for joining me once again for a bit of an update on an old album, even though it's only a few years old. But my sort of experience and journey on that one. So as I say, thank you very much for joining me, and I hope this has been informative and interesting. Bye bye for now.